Can we turn that down, maybe? Is that its lowest? No. Everyone's got their obsession. It's as low as it goes. Let's see if it starts to get too hot and turn it back on. I already feel better. Yeah. Off we go. Okay. So just recontextualize briefly. Let's remember.
Yeah, excuse me, the microphone. I'm so sorry, the microphone.
No, that's really
important. We can barely hear you well.
Is that so you can barely hear me? No.
Yes.
Hang on a second. Wait. Now, how do you hear me now?
The same. And I know it's you because I can hear well the other classes.
Come on. It's that. I don't believe anything is me. I have no me. Wait.
That's the microphone.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Ah, man, yeah. Are you sure you can't hear me well? Look at this. Look what's going on there.
Hey, my volume is on 10.
You can hear me fine. You can't convince me you can't hear me.
Battery high.
Battery high. Wait just 1 second. We're going to check this out here.
Okay.
What is that thing called? Can you hear me better now?
No, sir.
No, sir.
I have to put my ear beside the telephone.
Wait a second then, hang on. How does this sound now?
Keep talking.
How does that sound? What? Keep talking? Well, thank you for your patience. How does that sound?
The same, Rob. I'm sorry.
No? Just
the same.
Okay. Anyhow, sorry, but on the machine here, it says that the microphone is working absolutely fine. So
Okay.
I'm very sorry. I'm going to try one last thing here. Just 1 second.
Yes, thank you. And I'm sorry about this.
Is this better for you at all?
No, sir.
Let's try something else.
Okay, don't worry. Okay.
No, I never worry, but I do. How about, hang on a second. How does this thing work?
The thing is, it's not my phone because I was listening to Shireen before. Okay. Sorry for interrupting.
Do this. Is there a mouse for this? Here's a mouse. I'm getting rid of this one.
Oh,
Good. Now let's just try this. Oops. Try this here.
Okay.
Something wrong with this thing. It's getting. Oh, I can't make it any louder. So anyhow, I'm testing the mic.
Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Sounds okay to me.
Okay.
All right, so Shem Yazor.
Thank you anyway.
Yep. And now, if you don't mind putting yourself on mute. Oh, you're actually here. Okay. Our context right now is the speech that's made by the person bringing the first fruits, right? Remember? And that speech becomes the centerpiece for the entire Haggadah. We tell this story of liberation, of freedom. We tell it through the story that is told by the person bringing the first fruits from the land. And we realized how important that is in the context, right, of this whole saga of going down to Egypt and then being freed from it, because that saga is actually one which begins with God telling Abraham that they will inherit the land. And Abraham asking what knowledge is necessary to truly inherit this land. And God says, oh, knowledge. Don't you remember in the Garden of Eden, that subject didn't go so well there. It became the entire saga of humanity in seeking that knowledge. Maybe it's not that it didn't go well, but it went a certain way. It went into exile and a long path to return to the garden. So too, knowledge is a long path which begins with an exile and has an ultimate return to the garden. And so here this man is, or woman, is with the first fruits of their land and celebrating the garden and being able to dedicate these fruits to God and to the service of the master of all, rather than eating the fruits in the service of themselves, which was the Garden of Eden. I'm bringing these fruits, which are the result of a long history, which has led here. I seek that fruits, expression, these are all metaphors also, expression, a life lived and manifest, be authentically expressive of the history which has led to it. Anything else is an inner exile. Anything else is a alienation from self. And so I will not bring fruits without telling the story. And I will not be able to really inherit this land without having actually lived through the story. And in a very deep sense, we all on our path to self-knowledge, to the higher knowledge, the knowledge of the deeper self, the higher self, the ultimate being, all have to travel through this path of some sort of an exile from self, which then requires of us the seeking to get back. And it's that seeking which then becomes the processes by which we actually become ourselves that we thought we were seeking, because it's not like you're seeking a self which is some static reality. Actually, that self which you're seeking is coming into being through the seeking of it. And that's a very important recognition to have, that we all live, and this is where we were last time, I'm just further conceptualizing it. We all live on a certain sense, this anus al pi dibur, if you remember, compelled by the word of Hashem, right? We all live a certain mission which we've been sent on, and all the things that go on in our lives, which seem like these are the sort of the happenstances of our lives, are actually the mechanisms by which that vision moves itself forward to its realization. And so the powers at hand are actually driving you towards where you need to get to. But that where you need to get to, and here's where it becomes sort of more complex than what the logical mind can sort of divvy out. But where you need to get to is itself the product of the authenticity of the search for your purpose's realization. So that sounds complicated because do I have a purpose? Or yes, you do. Is there one way for it to manifest? No. Is there only one way to get there? No. It could look very different, right? You might have a purpose of teaching, but it might come out in myriad forms, right? You might have a purpose of singing, but it might come out in myriad forms. You might have a purpose of, of, of research alone in a room, but it might come out in myriad forms, right? It might come out in the format of you, I don't know, having very intimate conversations, which you experience as being alone in, right? For the better or for the worse in terms of who you're having that conversation with, but that may be your way of accessing knowledge when in fact it's externally an interaction, but internally it's an interaction, you know? So there are many ways, and the authenticity of it derives from the truthfulness of the search, right? But it's all moving towards something which is preordained. It has the wrong connotation to it, but pre-imprinted, yes, right? Pre-imprinted, yes. So that was the Anus al Pi Dibur of Yaakov going down to Mitzrayim, right? And if you remember that it was a compulsion, and then the discovery of that, beginning with the most primal commitment to life's flourishing. That was the Jewish people having so many kids, all, which is so central to the beginning of the story. I mean, really, it's not that high a compliment that we were having, six kids at a time. I mean, it's really, really impressive, but rats do that also, It's like, what is this fertility thing, and the verse even uses Vayishrutzu, which is actually vermin, it's not vermin, but it's like crawling things that reproduce that way. I mean, is that what we're talking about? Yeah, we're talking about that. But we're talking about that in the context of those who are seeking to douse it, those who are seeking to control it, those who are seeking to overpower it, this love of life and commitment to the flourishing of life, right? So that was the context. Remember, they are there in a land which is not theirs, and the more they are afflicted, the more they become fertile and flourish, right? So that the image of the flourishing is not, wow, look how fertile they are. It's really something else. But rather, look how profound and embedded the commitment to the enhancing, growing, and expansion of life they are. And look how negative to that is this despot who, when he witnesses that, experiences nothing but fear, nothing but the threat of them overcoming him. More deeply and conceptually, despots in their essence are haters of life. They have no faith in life. They don't want life flourishing because it can't be controlled by them. More deeply, they're in a real way afraid of life, as are so many people who try to sort of turn themselves off. Because life, by its very nature, is rebellious. If you remember, as we explored the first time God was happy, was when the grasses, in a sense, rebelled and said, we seek our individual identity, even though you didn't tell us to become that. This was a while back, right? We are going to reproduce the seeds of ourselves, not just mixed together with all the grasses. We explored that teaching a while back. That's very, very important, that God is overjoyed with that spirit of rebelliousness, right? But not a rebelliousness which seeks to separate oneself from the drives of the universe, but rather rebelliousness which recognizes that the drives of the universe themselves are rebellious. They're always looking to break out into more, to evolve into something beyond. You understand that evolution itself is a, so to speak, a on a certain level, a rebellion against the current conditions of my nature, right? All of us are always walking out on the place where we have been. We're always in this lech lecha process of working towards and walking towards something which will be a more profound fulfillment of that original mission. I mean, so we're going backwards or forwards? Which way are we going? Okay, right. No, let's just leave that. Let's leave that one open for the mind of distinctions, right? Because this is not something for the mind of distinctions. It's a circular, almost like a spheric reality. So these were some of the deeper issues that we discovered, that on the one hand, Yaakov is compelled. On the other hand, what's going on there is they go down as a small unit, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger, reproducing. And then that bizarre, erotic ending to that whole story of like God falling in love with the Jewish people, in order to emphasize that this is not just about survival and reproduction. This is about the love of life. And yeah, isn't that interesting that love and reproduction became somehow intertwined in human life? I mean, we talk about the birds and the bees, but it's not really love, birds and bees. It's nature preserving itself, right? But with human beings, suddenly love's there, right? That's a really important insight, right? And that's, I believe, the important insight of the Haggadah as it ends this talk about reproduction and how heavily reproductive they were with passion, with God's passion, right? And that was where we had arrived. That was where we had arrived last time. So that's where we're now in the Haggadah with these very, very deep explorations or expositions on what's the most primal drive towards which life is driven, right? What's the deepest value that creation is embedded with? Yeah, that's where it has to start. If you don't start there, if you start with ideologies, if you start with male like machinations about like, well, I got this idea about how it ought to be, and I got that idea about how it ought to be, et cetera, et cetera. That was like the question of names and men, or male, at least the male principle. It's not really about men and women, it's more about the male principle, right? So then you will never really arrive at true freedom, because you began with your ideas, you didn't begin with life itself. So this love of life, this passion for life, this commitment to life's unfolding, this devotion to the flourishing. I mean, these are all the bases for everything that's going to come, and it all comes in this context of the quest for knowing, which was Abraham's quest. With what type of knowing will I truly inherit this land? Think about that in terms of the earth, not just about the land of Israel. What type of knowing does it take for me to truly, as a human being, inherit this land? That it be something with which I am actually identified, right? An inheritance is an identification with. This is my reality that I am bequeathing, right? How can I have that? What knowledge does it take to be there? Okay, well, that knowledge will only come by virtue of a quest, which begins with estrangement, alienation, exile. It will only become by virtue of that as you grope, seek, tread your way back, right? Okay, so, and that was the so to speak confusing aspect of it. So is there a self there at the end that I was always supposed to get to? It becomes by virtue of that devotion itself, but yet it is also in certain rubric, in a certain frame, embedded from the beginning. And I can tell you, as I said last time, from the perch that I'm sitting on, which is probably 30 years more than most of you, kind of at the other end of having raised a family and children and grandchildren, et cetera, et cetera. It's like the other end, and I bless you all that you'll have some aspect of that in your lives. yeah, in different ways, but like, when you look back and like, wow, and you see how your children from the very beginning, you could see what sort of person that was, and you watch them grow into that person, which could have gone many, many different ways. So, but if they're living authentically, they are living out that which they're embedded, but they've been seeking themselves all along, right? It's very beautiful to watch, and it's very important to recognize it in ourselves. That also can be greatly relieving in the sense that if that is my true and honest quest, then it will be granted. It may not be granted in precisely the way you had imagined it would be realized, but it will be granted, right? And I think that is elemental here to this, also to this story, as we'll see as it unfolds. Another point which I didn't make last time, which is how important it is to the Torah here to say we went down there b'mitei ma'at. Mitei ma'at. Mitei ma'at means very, very small, almost infinitesimal, very, very small. We were very small, mitei ma'at. We weren't just a few, right? We were ma'atim. We were mitei ma'at. Mitei ma'at is, even for someone who knows Hebrew well, it's difficult to understand why we didn't just say, right, lagur sham me'at, that we were just a few. What's this mitei ma'at thing? Mitei, a mate is a dead person. So mitei ma'at, few dead people? No, obviously not, right? Mate apparently actually has to do with like a mate has been separated from life, in its wholeness and its fullness, right? So we were really like this separated out, very, very small number of people. Why do we need to start there, right? Well, I'll tell you my suspicion, not only because of what I've been talking about, which is about how, and then they grew into a great amount, which is the contrast that the Haggadah sets up and the Chumash sets up. We started small, we got very big, Well, why? Okay, yeah, you didn't really have to tell us how small we were. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I'll tell you why. Because here's the principle of the universe. People think things small are inconsequential, right? Inconsequential means of lacking importance. People think if it's small, that equals unimportant. Yuck, 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 yuck. I'll show you. It may take you a few thousand years to discover the power of an atom. But my dear friends, actually, the smaller it gets, the more powerful it is. You can add up as much TNT as you want. You're going to not near the power of splitting one atom. You're not going to near of it, the release of the energy that's in there. What are you talking about? I'm going to fill up the whole village with TNT. Let's watch that. That's nothing compared to an atom bomb. Nothing. All right, let's make more. We're going to pile it up. Yeah, you and the Nimrodian people going to keep piling it up. Like make the tower higher and higher. Let's see. You don't realize that you will be like the sand on the sea. So numerous as the sand on the sea. What kind of I don't want to be sand on the sea. I want to give me something like the towering sequoia. I don't know. Like, no, the power is in the infinitesimal. The smaller it is, ironically, the more directly it relates to the infinite. And therefore, the more the energies of the entire universe run through it, the more it expands, so the more diffuse that becomes, the less focused. There's a very important recognition in life, because people think that the small things, well, they're inconsequential. It's the big ones. There's a lot of people seeing it. It's really getting out there. It's like moving, worlds. It all rests on very small and subtle differences. Say, let's put it back into psychology because that's easy for people to relate to. It's like of your self-conception, right? Those are like subtle shifts between, let's say, being self-involved and narcissistic, or being devoted to the realization of oneself, or being devoted to the realization of oneself as an expression of the entirety of the universe, or whatever. But you understand, if you're not going to start here, then it's not going to go anywhere. You have to start here. You have to start with this small little guy, right? The small is where everything is intensely located. On the other hand, in life, now let's get back to life, right? That was physics for a moment, right? And a little bit of psychology. In life, right? In life, it's this realization, right? That small relates to everything in its entirety. That makes it so powerful. By which I mean, if you're doing a small thing and you have in mind the big context for it, it becomes intensely meaningful and can be a channel for all of that in that very intense way. As opposed to if you've forgotten about the all and you just get micromanaged around details, then you just get trapped into the details. But if you see those details as part of a big path towards better, if you see those details as embedded in a infinite web of interconnections upon which you are having impact, whoa, then every single move you make becomes highly significant. So now let's go back to here. If we were just told that they became very numerous, we wouldn't have learned this deep truth, that Cherut not only rests on the love and passion for life and its flourishing, it doesn't only rest on that. It also rests and needs the awareness that every minuscule action, human being, word, cell, atom, and smaller is, in its minusculeness, most deeply connected to that infinite presence of all. And then, why is that important? Because then all of that becomes your support for what you are doing. If you try to skip over the small things, the small details, the processes along the way, let me just get to the end point. You won't, because you won't have, so to speak, concentrated all of the power of Hashem's desire for your realization in a way that is concentrated, right? In your will, in your actions, etc. I'll turn this on. I think it's unfair to all of us too. No, it's okay. Are you guys sweating?
No.
You're okay? Okay. Oh, that's so good. Okay? You hear this? You hear this? So this is really important. Like b'mitei ma'at. It was very important for them the Torah to say that. And here's where I want to prove to you this, and then we're going to move on. And that is, notice if you remember the words b'mitei ma'at with a small number. The proof was b'shivim nefesh yardu avotecha mitzrayma. It was with 70 people that you went down to Egypt, and now Hashem has made you as numerous as the stars of the heaven. I love this. I'll tell you why. Because that number 70 is the way for the Torah to describe a concentrated version of the entirety of, let's say, of humanity, right? Remember, there's 70 nations, right? Well, there aren't 70 people, there's 70 nations, but they begin with 70, and then it spreads out from there, right? Begins with 7 days, and it spreads out from there. You begin with 70, within which, Moshe Rabbeinu will say at the end of his life, within which all of the nations of the world are represented in the 70 souls of the Jewish people. All of the nations of the world are represented there. Moshe says this. He says that he made you of the same number as the nations of the earth. That means that you're a small people. Remember, it says Atem Ma'at, you're a very small people, right? You're the smallest of all the peoples. Huh, that's right. That means you're a concentrate of all the peoples. And just look around the room here. I mean, I know some of you are converts coming in also, which is another aspect of that. But even if you were all born Jewish, you'd look around the table and you'd see, you know, Yemenites, Moroccans, Spanish, and you know, Argentinian and American, and my gosh, like it looks like the UN sometimes, my Shabbos table, you know, like sometimes much looks like the UN, you know, it's like every nation is represented around the Shabbos table, you know, it's like, this is really a true thing that like the entirety runs through this very small people, because that's the way the universe works. The entirety runs through this very small universe. Take a look at those stars. They look pretty small, don't they? I mean, you wouldn't believe what energy is there. But from our perspective, and that's the point, from our perspective, stars look very small. And that's the point. You need to learn that small things carry the powers that are far, far beyond their physical size. Okay, and the smaller they are, the more of it they concentrate within it. Okay, so this is another element which I really believe is part of this quest for Cherut, to know these things, right? To know the passion for life, to know that life is driven towards flourishing, and to know that every single individual, every single move, every single word can carry within it with appropriate consciousness, and perhaps does even without appropriate consciousness, right? The all speaking through it. Tune into that, right? And then that all will be with you in the fulfillment of what you identify as the realization of that selfhood which Hashem has blessed you with. Yeah, that little tiny selfhood. That, oh, come on, it's a joke. It's a joke compared to the universe. You're concerned with yourself. Come on, get off it. No. Somehow every human being has this embedded sense. No, I'm important. I'm important. And if you lose that, then you lose your freedom. It's everything. The universe is behind me. Why was the first human being created alone? So that every human being will know from that the whole world was created for me. Created for me, meaning dedicated to my fulfillment. Okay, so these are establishments of right consciousness at the outset of this journey, right? And again, as I pointed out, it was what Avraham asked for. I wanted to know how will we inherit this land, which is the concentrate version of the entire planet. Same point, right? Walk around Israel, you're going to see the Sahara Desert. You're going to see, like, maybe not the Alps, but you can get close to it. You're going to see, all right, we only have one lake, but that's enough. It's like everything is like in miniature, but it's like the whole world in miniature. Very strange thing about the climate of this country. Very strange thing, but that's the way it is. Yeah, that's the appropriateness of the Jewish people to this land is around that, and the teaching is that yeah. Okay, I think we'll stop there for now about that. So now we're going to move on to the next statement that that is declared by the person bringing these first fruits, right? Vayareu otanu hamitzri. Okay, so moving on. In English it says, and the Egyptians probably were bad to us or something like that. Vayareu otanu hamitzrim. Vayanunu, and they afflicted us. Vayitnu alenu avodah kasha, and they placed a difficult work on us. Difficult work. Okay, difficult work. Now, like with the previous statement that this person bringing the first fruits makes, so also with this statement, the Haggadah is going to like open up each of the words or each of the phrases and connect it back to the original narrative in Sefer Shmot, in the book of Exodus, showing the connectivity between what he's saying now at the end of the path, when he's bringing the first fruits of the inherited land, back to the beginning of the path when they were in Egypt and it happened, okay, to see how the story is actually that story. But every time they bring a verse, we're going to want to be very careful to understand what bringing the verse adds to the statement that was made. You're going to see it right away in the first example. But is the technique clear to you? The technique of what's going on? We're taking word by word what's being declared by the person bringing the first fruits, and we're connecting it back to the verses that were there in the book of Exodus, which describe it. He's bringing these first fruits in the book of Deuteronomy, so it's like, okay, so this is called drasha, right? This is the fulfillment of what the rabbis understand to be the way for us to be doing the Haggadah, which is doresh. You've got to be making deep questing investigation. Questing investigation, that's what it's all about. Okay, here we go one by one, and you're going to see like right away, like, wait a minute, is that what it said or is that not what it said? What's going on around here? Okay, that's what I'm hoping you'll feel. It's the only way to learn anything is to be surprised. Okay, so Vayareu otanu hamitzrim. Now, first of all, I want to point out that the statement that the Egyptians were bad to us, right, is also grammatically has kind of a double entendre to it. Vayareu lanu hamitzrim would have meant they were bad to us. Vayareu otanu hamitzrim can mean they were bad to us, but it also can mean they made us bad. Wait a minute. Well, let's see. I believe that the Haggadah is going to pick up on both meanings. Okay, so here it goes. Where were the Egyptians bad to us? The Doresh asks. I mean, I know they made us work hard. They afflicted us, right? So just say, by Yitnu alenu avodah kasha, right? And they made us work hard and they afflicted us. Why do you have to evaluate what they did as having been bad? I'll figure it out. Like, why do you have to evaluate that what they did was bad? Okay. Well, let's take a look at the verse they bring. So the verse they bring is probably one of the most seminal in the story, because let's remind ourselves of the story just a little, like a couple of verses before. We're in chapter 1 of Shmot, okay? In chapter 1 of Exodus. You don't have to have it in front of you if you don't, but it's nice if you do. Here it goes. There was a new king who became the king of Egypt. He had no idea about Yosef. He didn't know Yosef, okay? And he says to his people, this Jewish people, or the Israelites, Rav ve'atzu mimenu. They are more numerous and more powerful than us. I mean, first of all, I got to say that's hard to believe, but okay, maybe. But you can hear the paranoia in his voice. You know what I mean? It's like, maybe I doubt it. Anyhow, whatever. Well, maybe not paranoia, but propaganda. They've already become more numerous and more powerful than we are. And we've heard that trope before. Anyhow, hava nitchak malo. Let's be devious with them or it, him, right? The simple meaning is this people, right? Let's be devious. Let's be very clever. Okay, lihitchakem is to be clever. It's not to be wise. It's to be clever. Okay, let's be clever, but really let's be devious. Pen yirbeh, lest he get even more numerous. V'hayati krenna milchama v'nosaf gam hu al sonenu milcham banu v'ala min haaretz. Lest a war might happen, and he or this people will become joined to our enemy, add himself on to our enemies, and they will fight against us. And v'ala min haaretz can either mean they will leave, which doesn't sound like it ought to be such a big worry, given what he's saying his worry is, or we'll have to leave, but he didn't want to say about himself in the first person, we'll have to leave, because that's almost like cursing yourself. This is very typical in the Tanakh and in the rabbinic literature. People don't say anything bad about themselves, lest he, I don't even want to say this, but like, lest he, be hungry for the next 3 hours, when I'm talking about myself, but you say it as if you're talking about someone else, right? This is typical. So you need to know that this is typical in the Bible, and therefore it's a perfectly reasonable explanation of what they were talking about, okay? So I don't want to get stuck on that, but the concern has to do with them being overcome, correct? Good. Correct, right? So, I didn't leave time for questions about the previous section, but we'll leave time for questions at the end. So look, could you tell me, please, how this is Vayareu Otanu HaMitzrim? I mean, the next piece where, and they afflicted us, and they gave us very hard work, right? That's where they're bad to us, no? In this verse, they're just talking among themselves, right? They're just talking among themselves. They're just talking about being tricky and devious and clever. I mean, okay. They haven't done anything bad to us yet, have they? Okay. So here's the thing. Here's the thing. Here's the thing. It's like, if I'm direct with you and I'm open about what it is that I want, and then I say, look, this is what we need. And so let's say like this, listen, I need a cup of coffee. And so you go get me a cup of coffee. I mean, that was pretty direct, But people can be devious, right? And that was direct. But people can be devious. You all know this, right? I mean, people can be devious. They can ask for one thing, but actually have some other intention in mind, right? Like, you're walking down the street and the guy says, hey, what time is it? Now, it might just be, need to know what time it is. But then you notice he's got a watch. So this already is like manipulation, right? It's manipulation. Things can get worse and worse as the scale descends and degrades, right? Worse and worse. I mean, I don't want to take that circumstance to its ugly end, but like it could have an ugly end. Turns out, the girl thought that it was about marriage and love, and it turned out to not at all. We thought that, and actually do things, but I know people say not, and this is where it becomes very confusing. Our prime minister has the betterment of our nation in mind, and then you get all these people saying, no, he doesn't. He's just trying to avoid elections, or like. And then you get really confused. But I think everyone would agree that manipulation, deviousness, and hiding true intentions have a lot to do with evil. even if I'm doing something bad to you, chas v'shalom, right? Something bad to you, but I'm straight up about it. That's very different than when I'm trying to deceive you into thinking that what I have in mind for you is the best. But in fact, what I have in mind for you is the very worst, like your decimation as a people, the destruction of your reproductive capacities, the undoing of the things that you love most. Hey, we just need a little bit of help around here, lifting those stones. Anyone want to volunteer? Sure. Oh, good. Oh, you're pretty good at that. How's your brother at that? Why don't you bring your brother along tomorrow? Oh, nice. Yeah. He's also good at that. I'll bet your whole family's good at that. I'll bet your whole people's like that. I bet your whole race is like that. Come on. Help us out. Ooh, it's getting hard. The rabbis say, well, look at me. I'm part of it. Pharaoh would pick up a brick and say, I'm in. And it was all a trick. It was all beguiling them into thinking that we're together in this. That's nitchak malo. We got to be devious about this. The Ramban, Nachmanides, worth reading, if you don't read Hebrew, read it in English, has a whole description of the propagandizing of the Egyptian people into here comes that word, the dehumanization of the Israelites, so that they could finally get, and this is what he had in mind from the beginning, they could finally get to the final solution, which was that they would be willing to the Egyptians would be willing to throw Jewish babies into the river. How did he get there? It's just a few verses away, man. It's like, they put tax collectors over them to get them suffering from the weight of it. Then they have to start building these storage cities, and we're going to talk about them in a second. And they just kept getting bigger, and they just kept working them harder with parech, which we'll understand what that is. And they made their lives bitter with difficult work. And then Pharaoh says, listen, how about killing the little boys? What? I thought you just needed some help. You just needed some extra labor. Well, labor, labor, women's labor, men's labor. Just kill them, okay? When they're coming out of the birth canal, and they don't. No, these women are like beasts of the field. Okay, next, right? Next, so Pharaoh then says to his whole people, any Jewish baby born, and we'll leave it without the drasha, throw them into the water. I thought you just needed some extra work around town. Okay? No, we don't need your work, and we're going to find this out. We don't need your work, actually. We want you dead, or at least doused, reduced, out of the way, or at least without any dreams. And you know who the dreamers are, they're the men. Oh, no dreams around here. As Pharaoh later will say, after Moshe shows up, he says, you know what, you've been giving them the straw as part of what they get every morning. Tell them they got to collect their own straw so they don't rely so much on these stupid ideas that this Moses fellow came up with. Literally, he says that later. That's the fight. The fight is against hope. The fight is against dedication to something, higher purpose. That's what he thinks the fight is against. It turns out it's a fight against life. Okay? But the point is, the whole slavery thing was just a cover-up for the real intention, which was that they should stop having so many babies. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's what he says from the outset among his advisors. So Vayareu Otanu HaMitzrim is really a double entendre, meaning they were evil to us. They wouldn't have been called evil to us had they been straight up with their intentions. Hi, Israelites, there's just too many of you. We're going to decimate you. Okay, I mean, at least we're straight up. We know what we're up against. It's the deviousness. It's the tricksty. It's the snake-like, serpentine, sinister, other words with S. Any of those S words.
Sly.
Sly, thank you. Sly, serpentine, sinister, savvy manipulation from the very beginning of creation, right, is the theft of your ability to be real and to see what's real. Okay, that's evil. I'm not saying the other stuff is not hard. It's hard. It's hard. But let me ask you a question. If you have to work hard, but you know that hard work is for something that really matters to you, something that's authentic to who you are, something that is really part of the path of the universe that I'm aligned with, right? Okay? So when you're working hard that way, is that an affliction? It's a joy, man. An affliction in Hebrew, vaya'anunu, the affliction has the word ani hidden in it, which means impoverished. If you're working in a way which it has absolutely nothing to do with you, instead of becoming richer and richer by your work, you become poorer and poorer because you're alienated from the labor that you've been forced by circumstance to do, okay? Forced by someone else to do. You become less and less connected to your life force. You become more and more drained by it. Is that not so? The more, yeah. So avodah kasha, if it's hard work, right? Vaya'anunu, and it's affliction in that Hebrew sense of affliction, right? That itself is a product of the fact that it's all a devious disconnect from your life that I'm forcing you to labor in, okay? And this is exactly, right? Because it was all just my, started out with, hey, what time it is? What time is it? It all started out there with a trick that hid my real intentions. And so everything now I have you doing in a way which is completely disconnected from realness, from authenticity, from what's real, what's reality. I mean, like, oh my God, like, I don't want to think about, how many, even probably people in the room who've been in those kinds of like interactions and relationships, I don't want to think about myself. It's like, oh, I thought you were my friend, right? I used to be highly suspicious of this. This is like an old theme in my life. I used to be highly suspicious. I had a very good friend like back in college, and he invited me to come home with him on this long train ride. He lived in Silver Spring, and I was at Columbia. A long train ride to come home with him on Shabbat. So we arrive at his house, and then he's on the phone with his local friends from Silver Spring. Then we go to the shul, and he's hanging out with his friends from Silver Spring. And then the next morning, very quick meal because he has to go out to be with his friends from Silver Spring. And I'm like more and more looking at this, and I can't say that on the spot I was conscious of what was going on with me, but I can say now what was going on was this like, you actually didn't invite me to be with you in Silver Spring because you want to be with me in Silver Spring. You actually invited me because, I don't know, I guess you didn't want to be lonely on the train ride or something. I don't know. This all feels like a game. Now, whether I was right or not right, he was really a nice person. I could not recoup the friendship with him. Could not recoup the friendship with him. And I'm not saying that I'm okay in that. I was a college kid. Like there's a limit how much wisdom you have when you're 20. But yeah. But when I look back at that, that's I think what happened to me emotionally, right? So we've probably all been in situations like this. That wasn't evil. That was just like whatever it was. But it was not. It wasn't clear. It wasn't clear. It wasn't clean. Okay, so the Vayareu Otanu Mitzrayim. Now let's get back in here. We're like, I'm taking that long trip and I'm putting in all the effort, etc., 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 and it turns out that it has absolutely nothing to do with what I think it's about. That's an avodah kasha. Now listen to this amazing statement, right? Vaya'anunu, they afflicted us. But remember, affliction also means they're impoverishing us. They're draining us of our energy, okay? How? Well, I'll tell you. They placed taskmasters or tax masters. Not so clear. According to the Ramban, they first just started raising the taxes. That's all, right? Means tax masters, right? Leman anoto, b'sivlotam, in order to make them afflicted. Well, they're just paying more taxes. Yeah. Taxes to who? For what? Next. Vayiven arei miskenot lefaro. They were building. Now here's literal, and you're going to have to also be midrashic in my opinion. But literal, it means they built storage cities for Pharaoh. Pitom and Ramses. Pitom and Ramses. Now listen to this incredible insight of the rabbis, right? And I believe it's hiding within this usage here. Like, where's the Inui? Where's the affliction? They were building these cities. Okay, is that an affliction to build a city? It's not an affliction to build the city if you are building a city that is part of the big plan you identify with. You know what I mean? Where's the affliction? No, they understood that these cities being built have nothing to do with them. That's the sense of the taxation. Okay? It's just a tax on me for someone else. But worse than that, the rabbis really exaggerate this. Pitom, you know what that word is, the rabbis say? Pitahom. Pitahom means the mouth of the depths. What? Yeah, just 1 second. And you know what Ramses is? You know what Ramses is? It's mitmoses, means it was dissolving all the time. Huh? Yeah. Listen, every time they built something in Pitom, it would get swallowed up into the depths. You'd build. Next morning, where's what we built yesterday? Quicksand. You didn't know you were building on quicksand? Well, you are. Get back to work. Oh, you didn't know that it just, you're using bricks that dissolve every time there's an east wind and every night there's an east wind? Oh, sorry. Get back to work. The creation of the context here is that there's absolutely no forward movement, no purpose, and worse, it has nothing to do with you. Your life energies are being devoted to something which has no outcome, no manifestation, nothing. There's no fruit. There's only the tree. There's only the process, right? So processes are very, we all believe in the process and the path, et cetera, but, we do like it when there's something at the end of it all, right? I mean, it's not just about the process. I mean, for some people, maybe they think that's an enlightened way of living, but that's certainly not the Jewish way. There's There's the path and the fruit of that path, but they need to be authentically interrelated. What happens when all you have is just the work? And that work itself is alienated from you. That's the affliction. That's the affliction. It's not that they worked hard. That's the next statement. You get this? It's an incredible insight. They were doing this in order to afflict them. They put Sarei Misim in order to impoverish them, in order to afflict them. Okay? That's the power of that verse. Because, I mean, it's not necessarily an affliction to pay taxes. I mean, you know, if you're part of the country that you're also benefiting from and believe in, et cetera, right? It's part of your ideals that are being reflected through. You know what I mean? It's like, where's the affliction here? For here, you really do need to understand that the affliction is that it has nothing to do with them. And this is really sort of the harbinger of the modern alienation, you know, which he like, Marx had a very profound insight, right? And that is that as industrialization continues, people will become more and more alienated from the work they do. Because as the capital becomes more and more accumulated in the oppressing class, so the workers will have nothing, less and less to do with the work they do, because it's all about the accumulation of the capital of the person at the top of the ladder, right? And then, so you build a factory, and you know what? We just need you. If any of you saw Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times, we just need you turning that bolt as the carriage goes by. Did you see that? Anyhow, you should. It's like the car goes by, he's on an assembly line, and all he does all day is, you know, and Charlie Chaplin and his magic, you know, he walks around all day like that. It's like, that's all he can do. He's been particleized into that one specific particular act, which is completely alienated from any result, completely alienated from his personhood, and in exile from himself, because, so to speak, it's not right to put the blame on it, but the work is contributing to the impoverishment of his self, because he's alienated from the output. Compare that to someone who grows the sheep, shears the wool, cleans the fleece, what's the word? The knoll? Spins the yarn, knits the sweater, and gives it to her grandchild. You know, it's like, that's hard work. Yeah, but it's certainly not an impoverishment. It's a deep enrichment. Okay, so this is, here they are. The work itself is misrepresented. It's actually part of ruining their sense of purpose. The work is designed to deny them any enrichment. This is a far deeper enslavement than just being told what to do. This is a loss of self. And through that, an attempt to disconnect us from any hope. Because once you've lost yourself, there's nothing to hope for. There's no way out of this trap. I don't even know why I'm doing this, what it's for. It's not for anything. I mean, aren't you enlightened and believe in the process? No, I want to do something which has productivity and contribution. I am designed for that. So this is what the evil, which is at the opening of the verse, Vayareu otanu hamitzri. They made us. Let's just stay with that interpretation. They were evil to us. They also made us evil in the eyes of the Egyptians, so that they would eventually be willing to throw our babies into the river, right? But the deeper evil here is that they were deceiving. disconnecting us, alienating us from ourselves, our purposes, our reality. And I want to tell you something. The Rambam in the laws of the Seder, he says a really important thing, and we're going to come back to the statement. He says, you know, if you have a smart son, smart child, really is a child, any child, if you have a smart child, tell that kid the whole story of, you know, all the, of leaving Egypt on this Seder night. Tell him the whole story, you know, from the beginning to the end with all of the plagues and the miracles and this and that, okay? If you have a not smart son, so take him to see a slave and tell him we were once like that and God redeemed us. Now, in the Jewish world, a slave didn't live bad. There's so many rules about how to treat a slave that ultimately, if you have a couch, he's got to have a couch. If you have a Sealy Posturepedic mattress, he's got to have a Sealy Posturepedic mattress. Is that still considered a good mattress? If you've got a color TV, he's got to have a color TV, right? It's like, that's actually the way we treat our slaves. So the kid goes down to the, you know, down to the basement and sees the slave. And like, we used to be in that, oh, it doesn't look so bad. No, even, this is what the Rambam means, even a foolish kid will understand. He might be living well externally, but he's got no life. He's not working his own work. He's not living his own life. That even the foolish kid, or like the one who is not intelligent, he'll get it. That's the belief of the Rambam. He'll get it. Don't tell him the whole story. Like, it sounds like, well, he's the one you should tell the whole story to, right? I mean, with all the miracles and stuff. No, because that'll just confuse him as to what the real issue is, right? The Egyptians are not about making us enslaved to them. That's the external means. The Egyptians are about getting rid of us, more profoundly, getting rid of that love of life. And that love of life can be gotten rid of when I alienate you from yourself. That's evil. Because they were doing evil. Therefore, out of that derives that they afflicted us and they gave us hard work. Not just work, hard work. It's hard because it has nothing to do with me. By the way, the rabbis actually say that in their way by saying they'd make the men do women's work and the women do men's work. That's like a picturesque way of describing, I think, what I've been talking about. Okay, so that's the next verse. I'm happy to open up subjects that came up for you listening to this, questions that you have.
Can you define like what probably the Rambam meant by men's work and women's work?
No, that wasn't the Rambam, that's a Midrash. You know, yeah, I mean, for them it was sewing as opposed to bricklaying. Yeah.
I understand that this story had to happen, but just practically speaking, like, why did the Jews fall into victimhood? Like, why didn't they fight back? They were a huge community, flourishing, strong.
Yeah, this is a great question, and I think it's kind of answered by that passage in the Ramban and Nachmanides, who explains that their nitchakma, their cleverness, their deception, was that, I mean, you know, it's like it just started with you know, could you guys help us a little bit with like building this town? Yeah, sure, we live here, we're in, and some taxes, yeah, we're in. Oh, taxes are going up now. Is that okay? Yeah, we need some more money. Yeah, taxes are really going up. Oh, I got to work really hard to pay those taxes. Yes, you do. As a matter of fact, we're not going to pay you anymore for that work because it's part of a national enterprise. Oh, well, yeah. Yeah, you're right. Patriotism, of course. Yeah, I'm in. I'm all in. Okay, great. Everyone's in? Yeah, we're all in. Let's do it. Okay, great. Why is it that it keeps sinking in? Well, that's just the way it is here. It's very hard to work around here. Keep going, right? Keep going. It's like, by the time you're in the inertia of being controlled by another, very hard to break out of it.
Yeah.
But the good news is that's the next verse we're going to see, that we cried out. And we're going to see, we didn't cry out to God. You'll see. We actually cried out from the enslavement. Ooh, then God said, I think they got to the point where they needed to get and recognize the depths of how easy it is to deceive and lose yourself, and how critical and elemental it is to get back to who you are created to be. Okay, so yeah, it's like a process.
Thank you.
Other. Well, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yes.
very much.
Bye-bye.
You said them being deceived had anything to do with,
Them being saved?
no, to do with the deception in their family beforehand, as in like with Isaac and Jacob, and then with like Yaakov and Laban.
I think you're right about the theme.
Is that, yeah.
I think you're right about the theme, that on a certain level, this is the primal issue begins with Lavan. That's what you're referring back to with Laban. Yeah, the primal issue begins there, and there's a particular modality of it with the Egyptians. Right, exactly. He's just deception itself. With Paro, his deception is to serve a certain purpose. So it's different. He's about the ideas and the men, and it's different. Right? But you're right to notice thematically.